The storm rolled in just as the fax machine began its metallic whine, spitting out page after page of dense, antique French clauses. The glass-walled boardroom on the 48th floor pulsed with the low hum of voices, the kind of room where even whispers carried weight. Logan Hale stood at the head of the table, jaw set, his reflection fractured in the pane behind him. 30 minutes to respond, 30 minutes to catch what could either be the company's biggest expansion or the start of a slow, humiliating death spiral. "Where's the translator?" His voice cracked like a whip. Advisors shuffled, directors glanced at each other. The official linguist, fluency bought at 6 figures, was out sick. No one else dared touch the pages now coiled in the tray like a snake waiting to strike. Panic flickered behind Logan's composure, barely visible, but there. He had built an empire on control, and right now, control was slipping. Down the hall, pushing a cart heavy with disinfectant and rags, Clara Rivera almost passed by. Her first week on contract, she'd learned to keep her head down and her footsteps quiet. But the door was ajar, and voices leaked into the hallway. "Exclusivity clause. Millions on the line. We can't risk sending it unverified." Clara froze, her grip tightening on the handle. She knew those words. She had read them in dusty textbooks when everyone told her she'd never need them. Against every instinct to remain invisible, she stepped closer. "Can I help?" Her voice was soft but cut through the tension like a dropped pin. Every head turned toward the doorway. A woman in a plain uniform, gloves still on her hands, stood half in shadow, eyes lowered yet steady. Logan stared as though a ghost had spoken. "This," he said slowly, holding up the fax, "is high-level legal French. You?" His tone balanced between disbelief and mockery. Clara's shrug was calm. "If I can take us for, look, I'll let you know." Silence hung, heavy and dangerous. Finally, Logan thrust a page across the table. Clause 3. Translate. She read, eyes moving smoothly over the archaic script, words that looked like brick walls to everyone else opening like familiar doors to her. When she spoke, her English was precise, without hesitation. Party A reserves the right to automatically revoke exclusivity if Party B fails to meet the expected results in the first fiscal quarter. She looked up, expression unchanged. "That clause wasn't in the draft you approved. It's a trap, hidden under old phrasing to make it look routine." The room froze. Logan's pen hovered above the paper, then scratched hard across the line, black ink slashing through the threat. "Prepare a counter." He barked the order, but his eyes never left Clara. Directors murmured, unsettled. Who was this cleaner who saw in 1 minute what their lawyers had missed in days? Logan raised a hand, silencing them. "We'll verify," he said sharply. It bought time, but the tension sharpened. Was she a savior, or had she just bluffed the future of a billion-dollar deal? Clara placed the paper back on the table, picked up the cloth draped over her shoulder, and turned to leave as if nothing remarkable had happened. "What's your name?" Logan's voice stopped her. She turned, eyes steady. "Clara Rivera." He checked the clock. 23 minutes left. His gaze lingered on her, then hardened. "Stay." The storm outside rattled the glass, but inside, the greater storm was just beginning. The following morning, the building buzzed with rumors. Word had spread that the new cleaning hire had walked into the boardroom and spotted a legal trap worth millions. No one knew her name, but already they whispered, the girl with the cloth who outshone a table of executives. Some dismissed it as an exaggeration, others as an urban legend destined to burn out before lunch. Yet behind the glass doors of the 48th floor, Logan Hale sat alone at his desk. The contract spread before him, and he knew there had been nothing exaggerated about what Clara Rivera had done. He hadn't slept. All night, he replayed the moment her voice broke the silence, calm and unshaken, like someone who had nothing to lose and therefore no reason to lie. He had his lawyers cross-check the clause. Every word was exactly as she'd said. She had saved him, and that fact unsettled him more than he cared to admit. By noon, he made the call. HR would bring Clara up, under the pretense of formal recognition. But Logan's intent was more than a handshake. He needed her, not as a temporary translator, not as a fluke savior, but as someone embedded in his team. He couldn't explain why, but a gut instinct told him this woman was a thread he could not afford to let go. When Clara arrived, still in her Navy janitorial uniform, her eyes flickered between awe and caution at the skyline stretching out beyond his office windows. She carried herself carefully, as if every step might set off an alarm. Logan leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You knew," he said simply, "about the clause." Clara nodded. I recognized the structure. They wanted to bury the condition in archaic phrasing. It's a common trick. Logan raised an eyebrow. Common. To who? Because it wasn't common to my attorneys, or to anyone else at that table. She said nothing, only folded her gloved hands in front of her like a schoolgirl being. She scolded. For the first time, Logan noticed her composure wasn't arrogance, it was armor. I want you, he said at last, to work for me. Her head snapped up. Work? For you? As my translator, contracts, negotiations, international meetings, full access. He paused. Full pay. Clara blinked, visibly thrown. Mr. Hale, I'm a cleaner. No, Logan shook his head. That's a job you happen to be doing, not who you are. Yesterday proved that. Before she could respond, the office door swung open. Richard Cole walked in without knocking, his silver hair gleaming under the recessed lights. The senior vice president had been with the company for 22 years, long enough to think of the empire as his own. His smile was polite, but his eyes sliced toward Clara like scalpels. Well, well, Richard drawled. So this is our mysterious heroine. He didn't offer his hand. Instead, he walked a slow circle around her, like a man appraising a piece of furniture. I must say, Logan, I've seen many promotions in my time, but none quite so meteoric. From mop to mahogany desk in 24 hours. Remarkable. Clara's jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. Logan felt a rare spike of anger. Richard had always been ruthless, but this was something else. Thinly veiled contempt delivered under the guise of charm. Richard, Logan said, his voice cold. Clara's skill saved us millions yesterday. If you'd rather she had stayed silent, you're welcome to take responsibility for the fallout we avoided. Richard chuckled softly. Oh, I don't doubt her talent. I only question the wisdom of elevating someone so quickly without proper vetting. After all, we wouldn't want the board to think you were impulsive. Clara's gaze flicked to Logan, then back to Richard, and then, with deliberate calm, she said, You're right, Mr. Cole. I didn't ask to be in that room. I didn't plan to translate anything. But when I heard something that could destroy the company, I spoke up. Maybe that looks impulsive to you, but to me it looked like common sense. A hush fell. Logan almost smiled. Richard's expression faltered for the briefest second before the mask snapped back into place. Sharp tongue, he murmured. Let's hope it doesn't cut the wrong way. He turned, smoothed his tie, and walked out. Logan exhaled slowly. Clara remained steady, but he saw the faintest tremor in her hands now that Richard was gone. She had stood her ground, but it had cost her something. You see, Logan said quietly, you've already made enemies. Clara looked down at her gloves. That's nothing new. And in that moment, Logan realized she wasn't just fighting to be seen in this building. She had been fighting her whole life. The offer stood between them like a loaded gun. He slid a contract across the desk. Think about it. But understand this, Clara. When you step into my world, people will try to break you. If you come with me, you'll need more than courage. You'll need to win. Her eyes locked with his, unflinching. Then I suppose it's good I'm fluent in more than words. The storm outside cracked the sky with light, but inside the office it was Richard's shadow that lingered. Clara had crossed a threshold, and both of them knew it. There was no going back. The jet sliced through gray skies on its way to Paris, its engines humming like a restless heart. Logan Hale sat in the first row, staring at a screen of numbers he wasn't reading. His mind kept circling back to the woman sitting across the aisle, her dark hair pinned neatly, her notebook open, her pen moving in elegant strokes as she translated key terms into French. Clara Rivera looked nothing like the cleaner who had pushed a cart down his hallway a week ago. Yet she carried herself with the same steady calm, as though turbulence, billion-dollar deals, and sudden promotions were nothing more than inconveniences to be noted and filed away. Paris was supposed to be routine, a renegotiation with Dubois Holdings over a long-term supply contract, but Logan knew routine was a lie. Every negotiation in Europe was a war fought with smiles and clauses, and now, without his trusted translator, he had placed his fate in the hands of a woman no one in his company knew, a woman already drawing enemies inside his own walls. The Bristol Hotel loomed like a palace when they arrived. Inside the mirrored lobby, Clara's eyes lingered on the gilt chandeliers and marble floors, but she said nothing. Logan caught the silence and wondered what she saw, admiration or a reminder of the world that had never opened its doors for her. The next morning, The glass-walled boardroom of Dubois Holdings overlooked the Seine. 3 French investors waited at the polished table. Marcel Dubois, conservative and sharp-eyed, a man who weighed every word like currency. Sophie Marot, the visionary, who believed business was nothing without social purpose. And Jean-Luc Bertrand, notorious for testing every opponent until they cracked. Logan began with his usual measured confidence, laying out Lancaster's expansion strategy. Clara stood just behind his right shoulder, her voice flowing in French a beat after his, not just translating words but reshaping them. Disruption became revolution, a transformation, not a threat. Cutting edge became avant-garde, a term rooted in French culture, carrying both pride and innovation. At first, the investors listened politely, as though indulging another foreign CEO. But slowly, their posture changed. Marcel leaned forward, narrowing his eyes, as if surprised at how precisely the phrasing matched French legal nuance. Sophie's lips curved in approval when Clara adjusted a line about profit margins into a phrase that also implied social impact. Even Jean-Luc, arms folded, began to uncross them. Then came the test. Jean-Luc leaned back, eyes glittering. "Mademoiselle Rivera," he said in French, addressing her directly. "You just translated market disruption as révolution du marché. Why not the literal form, perturbation du marché? Are you softening the meaning for us?" The room went still. All eyes shifted to Clara. Logan felt his chest tighten. If she faltered, the deal would crumble here and now. Clara did not blink. Because in English, disruption carries a positive edge. It means innovation. But in French, perturbation suggests chaos, failure, danger. Revolution carries the energy of transformation, of progress, without implying collapse. It respects your language instead of fighting it. Jean-Luc's lips twitched into something between a frown and a smile. "And what of your translation of cutting edge into avant-garde? That word carries cultural weight. Are you so sure you can wield it?" Clara's voice softened, but her eyes never wavered. Because cutting edge in French sounds violent, almost meaningless. Avant-garde is more than literal. It's a promise of artistry, of leadership. It's your word, not ours. I chose it to show that we don't just want to sell you technology. We want to speak your language. All of it. Silence. Then for the first time, Sophie smiled. Marcel nodded once approvingly, and Jean-Luc, the shark, gave a short laugh. "Interesting. Very interesting." Logan exhaled, realizing he had been holding his breath. Clara had not just passed the test, she had turned it into a victory. The meeting lasted 3 hours, and by the end, Dubois Holdings had agreed to draft a new framework with terms more favorable than Logan had expected. Yet even in triumph, Clara's sharp eyes missed nothing. As they gathered their papers, she caught sight of a man slipping out of the hallway, speaking rapidly into his phone in German. She caught 2 words, Angebot and Morgan, offer and tomorrow. Her stomach tightened. Hoffman Industries, Lancaster's fiercest German rival, was scheduled to present the following week. What were their representatives doing here, lurking outside the French negotiations? And why did the voice sound eerily familiar? That night, Logan took her to dinner at a small bistro tucked into a quiet Paris street. Over a bottle of wine, he finally asked what had been clawing at him. "How did you know to make those choices? How did you know the trap clause, the cultural phrasing, the shifts no one else could see?" Clara swirled her glass, watching the wine catch the candlelight. "Because language isn't just words, Mr. Hale. It's weapons, shields, doors, and I've spent my whole life learning to recognize which is which." She said it so simply, but Logan heard the weight behind it. For a moment, the confident millionaire who conquered boardrooms felt the ground tilt. She wasn't just a translator, she was something else, someone who could see through the words people used to disguise their intentions. And in that dimly lit bistro, Logan realized he wasn't just building a contract in Paris. He was standing at the edge of a deeper war, one Clara had already noticed. The question wasn't whether she could save him again. The question was, what would it cost her? The Chicago Conference Center glittered with glass and steel, but for Logan Hale it felt like a battlefield. 3 days of sustainable investment presentations, endless networking dinners, and, most crucially, the unveiling of Lancaster Enterprises' new green portfolio, his ace card for the European expansion. Yet as the city's winter wind bit through the streets outside, an unease coiled in Logan's chest. Paris had shown him victory was possible, but Paris had also given him a shadow, a voice in German that Clara had overheard, whispering of offers, tomorrow, betrayal. From the moment they arrived, Clara moved with quiet precision. She scanned rooms like a chess player, noting faces, badges, body language. She translated documents, but also moods, where smiles masked suspicion, where laughter hid calculation. Logan relied on her now, though he never said it aloud. She wasn't just his translator. She was his interpreter of the world. It was on the second day during a coffee break between sessions that it happened. Clara lingered in a side corridor, adjusting the strap of her bag, when she heard the sound of low voices speaking in German. Her heart stilled. She pressed herself against the wall, listening. "Is the proposal ready?" a man asked. "Yes," another replied. "When Hale presents tomorrow, we'll have all the information we need for our counteroffer." Clara's stomach twisted. She recognized the voice instantly. Marcus Webb, Lancaster's vice president of business development. Logan's right-hand man for 10 years. The man who sat beside him in every major deal. The man who shook his hand like a brother. "And he suspects nothing?" the first voice asked. "Nothing," Marcus said smoothly. "He sees me as loyal. Always has. He'd never imagined I'd pass data to you." Clara's blood ran cold. Marcus was selling Lancaster's secrets, feeding Hoffman Industries, their fiercest German rival. "Your compensation?" the other pressed. $2 million, as agreed, Marcus replied. "And a board position once we take over his contracts." Clara pressed a hand to her mouth, forcing down the wave of fury rising inside her. Marcus Webb, the man Logan trusted most, was about to gut him from the inside. That night, she knocked on Logan's hotel room door. When he opened it, still in shirt sleeves, she stepped in, her face pale but determined. "Do you trust Marcus Webb?" she asked, without preamble. Logan blinked. "Of course. He's been with me for a decade. Why?" "Because he's betraying you." The words hung between them, heavy, dangerous. Logan's jaw tightened. "That's a serious accusation, Clara. What do you mean?" She told him everything, every word she had overheard, every detail of Marcus's plan. Logan listened in silence, his face growing paler, his eyes harder. When she finished, he ran a hand over his mouth. "If this is true," he said quietly, "it explains everything." "What do you mean?" Clara asked. "The deals we lost this year, the ones that slipped away at the last moment, as though the competition knew our exact numbers. I thought it was bad luck or carelessness, but now..." He trailed off, rage tightening his throat. "So what will you do?" Clara pressed. Logan stood, pacing the room. "I can't accuse him without proof. If I do, I look paranoid. The board will turn on me. No, this has to be undeniable." Clara's eyes sharpened. "Then we get proof." The next morning, she set her plan in motion. At breakfast, she approached Marcus with a polite smile. "Mr. Webb, may I speak with you? It's about today's presentation." "Of course," Marcus said warmly, too warmly. "I noticed something odd in the German translation of our proposal," she said, showing him her laptop. On the screen was a document she had prepared the night before, a decoy version of Lancaster's numbers, deliberately altered by 15%. "See, these figures don't match the originals. I thought I should bring it to your attention before showing Mr. Hale." Marcus studied the screen, his brow furrowed. Then he relaxed and smiled. "Good catch, Clara. Let me take a copy of this and review it with my team." She handed him a flash drive, her expression calm. Inside, her heart pounded like a drum. 2 hours later, in the grand hall filled with investors and cameras, Logan took the stage to present Lancaster's portfolio. Clara sat at the front, eyes flicking between Logan and the Hoffman Industries delegation. When Logan unveiled the true numbers, she saw it, the flicker of confusion, then panic on the faces of the German executives. Their prepared counteroffer no longer matched. They had been fed false data. Clara's trap had sprung. After the session, Logan summoned Marcus to a private room. Clara was there too, standing silently by the wall. "Marcus," Logan said evenly, "how do you explain that Hoffman Industries prepared a proposal based on numbers that only existed in a document Clara showed you this morning?" Marcus froze. Sweat prickled at his temple. I don't understand." "Clara created a fake draft," Logan cut in, his voice steel. "She gave it only to you. 2 hours later, Hoffman's counteroffer mirrored it exactly. Explain that." Silence. The air thickened. Marcus's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then, finally, he slumped. "They offered me more than you ever would," he spat bitterly. $2 million, a seat on their board. I gave you 10 years, Logan, 10 years of my life. And for what? To always stand in your shadow? Logan's face turned to stone. "I gave you trust, I gave you power, and you used both to stab me in the back." He stepped forward, eyes blazing. "You're finished, fired, and when the lawyers are done with you, you'll never work in this industry again." Marcus sneered, his eyes cutting toward Clara. This was you, wasn't it? His little pet, his spy. Clara's voice was quiet but sharp as a blade. No, not a spy, just someone who knows the difference between loyalty and greed. Security escorted Marcus out, his protests echoing down the corridor. Logan stood still, his fists clenched, his breath coming hard. Then he turned to the gathered team. I want every person here to understand something, he said, his voice carrying. Today, Clara Rivera saved this company again because she saw what the rest of us didn't. She has more than earned her place among us. Effective immediately, she is no longer just a translator. She is our senior consultant for international development. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then swelling. For the first time, the team saw Clara not as the cleaning lady who got lucky, but as the woman who had outsmarted betrayal itself. Later, when the room was empty and the echo of applause had faded, Logan looked at her. His eyes were softer now, though no less intense. You didn't just save my company today, he said. You protected me. They stood close, the unspoken tension crackling between them. Logan's voice dropped, rough with emotion. Clara, there's something I need to tell you. But before he could finish, Patricia burst in holding a phone. Mr. Hale, emergency. The Japanese investors are demanding a video call in 20 minutes. The moment shattered. Logan clenched his jaw, nodded, and turned back toward business. But Clara saw it in his eyes. The words left unsaid, the confession deferred. And she knew, next time, there would be no interruption. Rome shimmered under late spring light, ancient and restless, a city where every stone seemed to whisper about power, betrayal, and survival. For Logan Hale, it should have been another conference, another deal sealed in marble halls. Instead, it felt like a test he hadn't studied for. He arrived at the Palazzo della Cultura with his usual precision. Pressed suit, silver tie, every detail sharpened like armor. But at his side, the seat that should have been filled by Clara Rivera remained empty. She had resigned. The letter was still in his desk drawer in Boston, inked in a hand that was calm and decisive, like every choice she made. If what we feel is real, it will survive distance. If it isn't, better to end it now. Her words haunted him like a verdict. During the conference sessions, Logan's mind drifted. Every Italian phrase projected on the gilded screens reminded him of how Clara would have leaned in, adjusting tone, reshaping meaning to win not just approval, but trust. Every coffee break felt hollow without her quick wit or her sharp questions about who in the room was lying. The investors from Paris had asked about her openly. Where is your brilliant translator? One had said. Logan had forced a smile. She's on another project. The lie burned. By the second day, Logan left the conference mid-session. Rome's streets stretched before him, hot and crowded, but he walked them like a man in exile. He passed the Colosseum, its ancient arches catching fire in the afternoon sun, and thought of battles fought to the death for crowds who cheered and forgot. He thought of Marcus Webb's betrayal, Richard Cole's smirk, Victoria Ashford's mocking laugh, and of Clara standing calm in the storm, the only one who never flinched. And for the first time in years, Logan admitted to himself what terrified him. Without her, he wasn't sure who he was anymore. Back in Boston, Clara tried to bury herself in small routines. Late-night cleaning shifts, caring for her grandmother, translating odd documents for agencies that paid barely enough to cover groceries. But Logan lingered in every quiet moment. She heard his voice in the steady hum of the vacuum cleaner, saw his reflection in the glass doors she wiped down, smelled his cologne when she folded laundry in silence. Her grandmother, Rose, noticed immediately. You can walk away from a job, Rose said one night, stirring a pot of soup, but you can't walk away from what God puts in your path. Clara shook her head. It's not that simple. He's him, and I'm you, Rose interrupted firmly. And if he doesn't see you're enough, then maybe he's not as smart as you think. But Clara knew Logan had seen her. That was what made leaving so brutal. She hadn't walked away because she didn't care. She had walked away because she cared too much, and because the line between dignity and desire was thinner than she'd ever imagined. Meanwhile, Logan's isolation sharpened into clarity. He sat in his hotel room on the final night in Rome, staring at the Colosseum glowing outside his window, and realized the truth. Clara hadn't abandoned him. She had protected both of them from a mistake. She had forced him to decide whether what he felt was loneliness or something deeper. The answer struck him like thunder. It was love. When his plane touched down in Boston, he didn't go to the office. He didn't meet with Patricia. He didn't even glance at the stack of contracts waiting on his desk. Instead, he drove straight to the small brick apartment listed in Clara's HR file. He knocked, pulse hammering in his throat. For the first time in years, Logan Hale, The man who could face billion-dollar negotiations without blinking was afraid of the silence on the other side of the door. It opened. Clara stood there in jeans and a cotton shirt, her hair in a messy bun, eyes wide with disbelief. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, the air charged with everything unspoken. "What are you doing here?" she asked softly. "Can I come in?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee and lavender. Books lined every surface, plants climbed toward the light, and family photos crowded the walls. It was warm, lived in, the opposite of his cold penthouse. "How was Rome?" she asked, almost casually, handing him a glass of water. "Empty," he said. She frowned. "What do you mean?" Logan turned toward her, his voice low, almost raw. "Empty without you. Every presentation I sat through, I thought about how you would have translated it better. Every meal, I imagined what you'd say about the food. Every view, I wished you were there. And when people asked about you, I realized something. I don't want to explain you as an employee anymore. I want to explain you as the woman I can't stop thinking about." Clara's breath caught. She set the glass down before her hands betrayed her. "Logan." He stepped closer, his eyes fierce now, no longer the mask of a CEO, but the look of a man stripped bare. "I love you, Clara. I don't care what they whisper. I don't care what the board thinks. I don't care about the damn power plays. I love you, and I'd rather lose everything than lose you." For the first time in years, Clara felt tears rise. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. Logan reached for her hands, held them tight, grounding her. "Tell me," he whispered. "Tell me if you don't feel the same and I'll walk away. But if you do, don't make me spend another day pretending you're just my translator." The silence was long, trembling, filled with the weight of everything they'd fought and everything they'd risked. Finally, Clara laughed through her tears, shaking her head. "I've been in love with you since Paris, since you laughed at my legal Spanish joke. But I was afraid. Afraid of being the cleaner who seduced her boss. Afraid of losing my dignity. Afraid of you waking up one day and regretting me." Logan pulled her into his arms. "Clara, the only regret I'll ever have is waiting this long to tell you." She melted into him, the walls she'd built finally cracking. The kiss they shared was not hurried, not stolen. It was an answer, a contra. Seat signed without ink, binding them to something more powerful than any deal he had ever made. Outside, Boston's streets buzzed with ordinary life, but in that small apartment, Logan and Clara crossed a line there would be no return from. For the first time, Logan spoke the one language he had never dared to use in business, in contracts, in boardrooms, the language of truth, and Clara understood it perfectly. December in Boston painted the city in silver and gold. Snow drifted against glass towers, and the Lancaster Enterprises annual gala glittered in the grand ballroom of the Four Seasons. Crystal chandeliers caught every flicker of candlelight, tuxedos and gowns shimmered like stars, and conversations buzzed in half a dozen languages. For Logan Hale, the evening was more than a corporate tradition. It was his battleground and his stage. Clara Rivera stood at his side, dressed in emerald silk that glowed against her skin, her hair swept back, her grandmother's small silver earrings catching the light. She had grown into her role with ease. No longer the anonymous cleaner pushing a cart down sterile hallways, Clara was now director of international projects. Her name carried weight, whispered with respect among investors who once questioned her right to be in the room. But as she adjusted Logan's tie before he went on stage, she noticed something she had never seen in him before. Nerves. His hand trembled slightly where it held the microphone. "You okay?" she asked softly. "Perfect," he replied, forcing a smile. "Just nervous about the speech." Clara raised an eyebrow. Logan Hale, nervous about a speech? Now I've seen everything. He only gave her a mysterious smile, kissed her forehead, and stepped into the spotlight. The room hushed. Logan's voice filled the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, for years I believed trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Vulnerability was weakness. Distance was safety. I built walls so high that not even those closest to me could see inside. But this year, I learned something. I learned that true strength is not isolation, it's connection. That real deals are not sealed by contracts alone, but by people who dare to trust." Clara froze. His eyes found hers across the room, and suddenly the speech wasn't to the board or the investors or the cameras, it was to her. "Just over a year ago, an extraordinary woman walked into my life. She wasn't hired, she wasn't chosen by HR, she wasn't recommended by the board. She came in pushing a cleaning cart, and when everyone else panicked, She picked up a piece of paper and saved $1 billion deal in 1 minute. A ripple moved through the crowd, some shocked, others smiling, many leaning in closer. She taught me that intelligence without humility is arrogance, that success without purpose is just numbers, that leadership without heart is nothing but empty power, and she taught me the hardest language in the world, the language of truth. Logan stepped down from the stage, the microphone still in his hand. Every eye followed him as he crossed the ballroom floor. Clara's heart thundered. He stopped in front of her, pulled a small blue box from his pocket, and sank to one knee. "Clara Rivera, will you sign the only contract that truly matters? One with no expiration date, no hidden clauses. Will you be my partner, not just in business but in life? Will you marry me?" The room erupted in a collective gasp. Clara's eyes filled with tears. In the blur of faces, cameras, and whispers, all she saw was him. The man who once looked at her with skepticism in a boardroom, now looking at her with naked hope. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. Then louder, clear, and yes. Applause crashed through the ballroom, louder than any deal announcement, drowning out the old whispers of doubt. Logan slipped the ring onto her finger, stood, and kissed her. It wasn't the cautious kiss of two people hiding behind professionalism. It was the declaration of two lives colliding, witnessed by the world. But the story didn't end at the gala. 9 months later, St. Teresa's church filled with white flowers and quiet awe. Clara walked down the aisle in a simple but elegant gown, her hand trembling as it clutched the bouquet. Rose, radiant in a wheelchair adorned with ribbons, held the rings. "Who gives this woman to be married?" the priest asked. "I do," Rose said proudly, her voice carrying clear across the church. Then with a mischievous smile she added, "Though frankly they chose each other a long time ago. I'm just here to confirm she has excellent taste." Laughter rolled through the guests, breaking the tension. Clara caught Logan's eye at the altar and smiled through her tears. When it came time for vows, Logan's voice was steady, rich with conviction. "Clara, you taught me that love is not possession. It is choice. And I choose you today, tomorrow, and every day of my life." Clara's voice trembled, but her words cut sharp and true. "Logan, you saw me when I was invisible. You believed in me when no one else did. You loved me while I was still learning to love myself. I promise to choose you, in good times and in bad, in triumph and in loss, every day for the rest of my life." When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," Logan pulled her close, and the applause roared like thunder. At the reception, amid laughter and champagne, Logan presented Clara with a document, one final contract. It was written in his own hand, drafted like a legal agreement, but with a single clause. The parties agree to choose each other every morning, renew this agreement every evening, and honor it with words, actions, and unconditional love. Term: forever. Clara laughed through her tears as she signed beside him. "This is the most important contract I've ever signed. And the only one I'll never break," Logan said, kissing her. As they danced their first dance, Rose leaned over to a guest, her eyes glistening. "I told you from day one," she whispered. He was her fairy tale prince, and she was his. And as the music swelled, Logan and Clara knew they had closed the deal of a lifetime, not in a boardroom, not with a fax machine, not with lawyers, but with each other. No fine print, no hidden clauses, just truth.